I'm going to show you how to build out a great camera rig with all the different parts and pieces that you need. And we'll look at a few different options so you can select what's best for you and your own setup. And we'll also look at some things that you should definitely avoid. All right, let's get into it. A question I get asked all the time is, can I build out this Sony camera or this Canon camera or whatever it is? And the answer is yes. As long as you use a cage, you can definitely build out just about any mirrorless or DSLR camera. So of course that's where we're going to start, with a good cage, and we're building out the Fujifilm X-T4, but like I just said, you can really do this with any camera. The same principles will apply. Nearly all the parts I'm using today are from SmallRig, but you can of course use ones from Tilta or any other company that you want. Once you have your camera cage on, you need to add a base plate, and this is where your first decision really comes in for your setup. There are really two ways that you can do this. One, you can take your quick release plate like this Manfrotto one and put it directly on the bottom of your camera so that you can easily slide it off of all of the rigging that you build out and easily throw it onto something like a gimbal. The other way is that you directly attach your 15mm rod support to the bottom of your camera and then put the quick release plate on the bottom of that. The problem with doing it this way is you can't quickly remove the 15mm rods and all the accessories attached to it quickly from the camera. So these are two 15mm rod base plates, this one attaching directly to your camera with no quick release, and this one having a quick release so you can take just the camera off and leave the 15mm rods and all the accessories attached still. So it's really up to you. The nice thing about this one is the fact that you can move those 15mm rods up and down with this little adjustment. So if you need to get your matte box to just the right height to line up with your lens, you might want something like this. For this build out, I'm doing more of a handheld rig or something you'd use on a tripod, so I'm not too worried about quickly taking it off to put onto a gimbal. So we're gonna use this 15mm rod adapter, and I'm going to attach it to the bottom here with 2 screws. And that's one main key thing about any rig build out, is always have 2 points of contact if you can, so that way you avoid anything spinning off or becoming loose. Now I'm going to add a quick release plate to the bottom of this, again with 2 screws to avoid any rotation. Now let's add a top handle to this, and there's so many different great options out there, but I'm going to show you some of my favorites. So the first one is a top handle with a nanorail mount. So that way I can quickly take it on and off of the rig without any tools required. The next one is this little small compact one that does bolt on, so it's super sturdy, but of course it takes a little bit more time because it bolts on. And then we have the cheapest one from SmallRig that also bolts on with 2 1/4-20 threads. And this is definitely their most budget-friendly option, but it gives you the least amount of options because there are no threads here in the front for adding a monitor mount. Whereas on these other 2 ones, it has area locating pins, so you can easily add a monitor mount and you don't have to worry about it spinning loose. For the build out today, I'm going to use the nanorail top handle because it's so quick to take on and off. But unfortunately, this cage doesn't have any nanorail built into the top like some of my other cages. So I'm going to add a little piece of nanorail to the top here. Now let's get a monitor mounted onto this top handle. And the piece that I'm going to use here is this SmallRig monitor mount with area locating pins, like I mentioned earlier, so that it can't spin off. So I'll put that right here in the front. Now, a huge mistake that I see a ton of guys do is they use these magic arms of all different sizes and companies and things like that to mount their monitors. And it's just really terrible because they always end up spinning off. So let's say that I just mounted this here on the side. First of all, it's way too big and clunky and you're just gonna end up hitting this. And once you do, it's gonna start to unravel and that little 1/4-20 thread is just gonna become loose and you're gonna keep on having to tighten that down. Whatever you do not use magic arms anywhere on your rig. There's always a better way to mount something than a magic arm. And if you don't believe me, send me a message and I will find a better way for you to mount whatever accessory it is that you're trying to mount with a magic arm. So now let's get that monitor mounted in a much more sturdy and compact way. And you can see it has a nice low center of gravity. The monitor isn't sitting up all awkward and high. And it's of course nice and dead center behind the handle and right in front of your face so you can get your framing and make sure you have a good true horizon. And of course you can tilt it and leave it wherever you want and it's not going to move or fall because it's nice and sturdy. The next thing I want to add is our V-mount battery solution, and I want to show you a few different options. So this is one from Foca that attaches directly to your 15mm rods, and then it gives you a few different ports here on the side so you can plug in different things into USB or 12 volt, 8 volt here on the side. Now this is the first one that I bought, and I have since upgraded to this one from Tilta, which is a lot thinner and lighter, and I like it a lot more because the mount is even more flexible than this one. And it also gives you an additional D-tap port. Now, if you don't want to use these larger base plates, you can use something much more compact like this V-mount plate from SmallRig. Now, the only thing about this one is it doesn't have any hinges or way to attach to 15mm rods, so you really have to screw it into place, like into these screws in the back of this camera rig, and I could screw it right there, but then of course it blocks the monitor. So instead, I'm using this new one from SmallRig that goes directly into your 15mm rods, and then I've attached the V-mount plate here on the back using just 2 1/4-20 threads, and it's really small and compact, as you can tell. So I'm gonna get that slid into the back here. And the nice thing about it is on a hinge, so you can get the battery positioned wherever you want. Now it's got a V-mount battery on here, and of course there are all different options. This one from D&O is really affordable, but obviously it's much larger than a more compact small battery like this one from Yin Chem, and they basically have the same amount of watt hours at 99 and 95. If you have a lot of accessories to power, you can get something like this D-tap splitter, and then you'll have 4 more open ports to power everything up with, but I'm not gonna use it for this rig build today. I'm using cinema lenses, and the focus is fully manual, so I wanna add a follow focus to my setup. You could use a fully manual follow focus or a wireless follow focus. I've opted to use a wireless follow focus system because it gives me more versatility when I'm using a shoulder rig or a first AC. So in order to add this rod to my setup, I'm actually going to pull this back out here, and then I've already put a little 15mm rod thread adapter into it, and then I'm just gonna screw this piece right onto it. And then put it back in. Now let's get the follow focus added on. Now to control the motor, you can use the focus wheel that actually comes with it and just mount it here on the side. But what I like to use is this Tilta focus handle that gives you a nice place to grip and also makes it really easy to pull focus with just one finger with this little wheel here in the front. So in order to get this attached, it's an area rosette, which I don't have on my cage. So I'm using this little adapter that goes from area rosette to NATO rail mount. So there's actually NATO rail here already on the side of my camera cage. And if you don't have that, you can add a little piece of NATO rail like I showed you earlier for this top handle. Then we attach the micro USB cable that comes with it. And to power the focus grip, it just uses a standard Sony NPF battery. It's beautiful. Look at that. Makes me so happy. Next, we need to add a variable ND filter. And of course, there are all different options, but you could use something like this Tiffin variable ND filter and just screw it onto the front here. It's cheap, lightweight, and nice and compact. But what I like to use is the Polar Pro Base Camp because, of course, it's a matte box and it has a variable ND filter in there. And of course, you can swap out the filters for different variable ND strengths or ones with mist built into them like I'm using here. And this matte box uses a clamp-on method, so I can just clamp it right onto the front of this lens using a 95mm clamp adapter. And I don't actually have to mount it onto 15mm rods, which is nice because then I don't even have to add that second 15mm rod here on the other side. And man, look at this rig. It is looking so good. It's pretty nice and compact, and there's no extras on there that you don't need. But we're not done yet. There's still a couple more things we need to add. Now we need to get the V-mount battery connected to the camera to supply power. So what I'm using here is just a USB to USB-C cable and plugging it into the USB port here on the bottom of my battery and then into the side of the camera. Now, of course, the way that you power up your camera is going to vary from camera model to camera model. So you may use something like a dummy battery and then plug it into the D-tap port on the side of your V-mount base plates. You just have to look that up and find out exactly how much power your camera needs so you don't end up frying it. So this is really everything you need for a good solid setup without any extras. And you can see I always do this test, this shake test, to make sure nothing's wobbling or falling off or coming loose. You definitely want everything to be really solid and nothing to spin loose, and it definitely is. Of course, you can add other accessories to this setup like a wireless transmitter, lavalier microphone, shotgun microphone, whatever it is that you need. As long as you can find an open cold shoe mount or some 1/4-20 threads, you can definitely add a lot more things to this setup. All right, guys, if you want to see more videos like this, hit subscribe right now because I have a ton more videos coming out on shooting, editing, lighting, gear reviews, everything like that, and you don't want to miss it. All right, I'll see you in the next video.